Kia ora and welcome to the fourth and final episode of Canterbury Cricket's webinar series Team Talk. We've had some fantastic guests throughout our series so far, and tonight is going to be no different whatsoever. We're going to be talking coaching with Brendon, Donkers and Gary Stead. Throughout the series we have had three other episodes. We started off talking managing pressure, managing stress with John Quinn and Todd Astle. That was a pretty important starting point, I think, just with the way that the world is at the moment, with the uncertainty. It was really useful to get hearing some of their and just with everything that Todd had been through on the field, as well as some useful things we could use off the field as well and outside our cricketing lives. From there, we moved on to talk leadership with Cole McConkey and Amy Satterthwaite. And that was really interesting as well to hear their experiences, the way their games had developed over their time as leaders as well. And we picked their brains as to what makes a great leader in sports. And last week, week 3, we got our cricket geek on and we talked a World Cup experience with both Leah Tahuhu and Matt Henry. Between the two of them, they have been to 10 World Cup campaigns, so they were the right people to get to have a chat with. Unfortunately, couldn't talk about lifting a World Cup, but we got some real insight into exactly what a World Cup is like. And for today, episode number 4, we are going to talk all things coaching and the journey of a professional coach. But before we do jump into that and get started with our guests, we do have a little bit of housekeeping to go through. We do ask that you keep your microphone on mute throughout this webinar. Just means that we'll be able to keep that background noise to a minimum, make it nice and easy for you to hear what our guests have got to say. There will be the opportunity to ask questions as well. How this webinar will work is between myself, Gary and Brendon. We'll have a chat. I'll fire some questions their way. But if there's anything you think that we haven't covered off, you'd like a little bit more information on, then your way to do that is to use the chat function, which is highlighted in orange on your screen at the moment. Type your questions in there and we'll have Aaron from Canterbury Cricket look over those and become the question master at the end of this webinar. Lastly, this Zoom is recorded, so you can have your camera on or off. That's completely up to you. And the really cool thing with this is it means at a later date, you can sit down, you can look through these webinars, you can watch them again, listen to what we have to say. And at the moment, the previous 3 webinars, they're all sitting on Canterbury Cricket's Facebook page under the videos section. Right, that's the housekeeping out of the way. My name's Frankie Mackay. I'm going to be your host tonight and have been your host throughout this webinar series. And we are going to get started with 2 wonderful guests to talk all things coaching, their progression, the way they've gone through the game. They've both been fantastic cricketers in their own right, and I know they will be really embarrassed if I run through all their statistics and all their highlights, and they give me a bit of grief as well. They know that I'm a stats geek, but we haven't got all night to run through those things. But a little brief intro for them as well. Gary played 190 games for Canterbury and 5 tests for New Zealand, but it really has been the coaching scene where he has made his name. He started coaching while he was still playing, was involved in the New Zealand Academy before really cutting his teeth with the Canterbury Magicians. He won 2 titles in his first year with the Magicians, and that turned into his one and only season with them before he was called up to be the New Zealand White Ferns head coach. He spent 4 years with them, taking them to multiple World Cup finals, couldn't quite get over the line before he headed back to Canterbury Cricket and took on the role of head coach there. He wore multiple hats throughout his 6-year tenure there, including the CEO's hat when it was required, but they also picked up 3 Plunket Shield wins, and on the back of that success, he has gone on to become the BLACKCAPS head coach since 2018. Alongside him, I've got Brendon Donkers as well. Brendon also represented Canterbury and New Zealand in indoor cricket as well. He also has found a lot of success throughout his coaching career, and success seems to have followed him wherever he has gone. He also started out with the Canterbury Magicians. There's a sensible men, the pair of them, and was involved for 2 years before a very wise man bit his hand off to come and join him in the Canterbury men's side of the program. 2014, he finished up with the Magicians before joining the Canterbury men's side as an assistant coach, before working his way through there, taking over the white ball teams for some campaigns before becoming the head coach there in 2018. And he has also been involved with both the New Zealand under-19 boys sides and the White Ferns as an assistant coach as well. So a big thanks to both of you for joining me. It's really good to have you here. It'd be really great to pick your brains as well. But Steady, it's been a bit of an interesting time. International tours have been cancelled. Has that been a a little bit of a blessing in disguise to have some time at home and time for you and the players to recharge a bit?
Yeah, hi Frankie, and hi everyone. Yeah, it's certainly been, I guess, unsettling times as well with what's happened, and we're certainly no different in the way we've been affected with the BLACKCAPS. We are still, I guess, really in a state of the unknown of what's ahead of us. But hopefully things are looking positive for a reasonably full international season at home, and teams hopefully touring here. But obviously with what's going on with COVID-19 around the world, and there's been a little bit of a second wave of it recently as well. We just have to probably wait and see how things play out. But very hopeful that this summer we'll definitely get some international cricket on our home shores.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And Brendon, it was a disappointing end to the men's domestic season as well, having the last few rounds cancelled. Has lockdown been for you, and what's been the process, I guess, since that season finished early to now?
Yeah, thanks, Frankie. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it was a bit of a strange finish. We lost the last two rounds of the Plunket Shield. The season before, we actually didn't finish when Canterbury made the decision not to travel because of the unfortunate incident in March. So I think it's given everyone, it's put everything into perspective. It's probably put cricket into perspective as well. And it's given everyone the opportunity just to recharge their batteries, spend a lot of time at home with family and friends. And now that, as we're slowly starting to make our way out of lockdown and back into training, I think there's a greater appreciation.
And look, Steady, you started your
coaching and why
you started off your coaching career, Steady, before you'd finished playing domestic cricket. At that stage, was it something you just enjoyed? Was it something you just loved being involved with, or were you already starting to think that this actually could be a career for you?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't really sure. I was lucky I was given some opportunity to coach when I was pretty young. So I actually started when I was 18 at Canterbury Cricket, right down at the primary school levels, and going around schools and coaching, and that in itself was a start, and to, I guess, cut my teeth in coaching a wee bit as well. And the more I got into it, and the more I enjoyed doing it, as I guess, and aside from the playing side of it. So I always tried to keep the two, I guess, the playing side of it and then the coaching side of it separate, because they are, I think, different skills you need. But there's no doubt getting into coaching was because of a huge love of the game, and I obviously still have that. And the game has given me a lot, and I guess it's my way of also being able to give back to the game as well. So whether it's cricket forever, I don't know. I don't know what what's going to happen in 6 months, to be perfectly honest. But I love doing what I'm doing, and I love working with the people at New Zealand Cricket, and all the experiences that I've had in coaching have certainly helped me become who I am today.
And Brendon, yourself, you're a qualified teacher as well as being a coach. It's clearly something that you enjoy. Did you have a moment where you thought, yeah, cricket coaching, that could end up my career? Was there one you could kind of pinpoint, or has it just been a gradual journey into that?
It's probably more been a gradual journey. I cut my teeth in teaching and really enjoyed, I suppose, the learning process and how people learn, because it's very different. So and as I taught, I continued to play my cricket and had some experiences both here in Canterbury but also overseas. And it was probably when I was overseas, where I was playing cricket but also coaching, that I actually thought, well, this could be something that I really want to get into when I get home. I wasn't the greatest cricketer. I didn't have some of the natural skills that others had, and I probably got to a point where I thought, well, this is a really good opportunity for me. So love the game, and just the two fitted really nicely. So that's how the journey began for me.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of cricket coaches who have got a teaching background. I'd assume there's a lot of complementary skills that go with the two of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I suppose there's the pedagogical piece around around how you go about things, how you go about the learning of skill acquisition, and how individuals learn, and essentially that's what coaching is. It's taking a skill and trying to apply it to different contexts, and finding different ways and different means to go about it. So yeah, it's something that's always fascinated me and interested me, and I know Steady will agree with this, that when you're in the coaching game, your learning never stops as a coach, and it's something that you continue to do as players come and go, as I suppose different fads come and go as well. You've got to pick them apart and find out what works. So yeah, it's a never-ending game. And
your words, not mine. You said you're not the best player ever. It's a statement straight from you. Is there the chance, are we going to see more cricketers or more people who haven't been cricketers who can make it in that head coach role, or is there always going to be a place for past players moving straight into coaching?
Oh, look, I think you need an element of coaching. You need an element of being able to connect people and connect with people, and you need to have some background in cricket. I'm adamant to that. But yeah, look, I think there's a place for anyone to coach, whatever level it might be, and you don't necessarily have needed to play the game at a high level to coach, and you can be an outstanding coach coaching, primary school age children. It doesn't matter the fact that what you're doing is not at a high performance level or performance level, but the fundamentals are still the same. So anyone can coach.
I like that. And Steady, do you set goals? Do you have markers along the way that you want to be ticking off? Have you had jobs along the way that you wanted to reach by a certain age or certain stage, or is it more just an off the cuff, see how far you can get and when you get there?
Yeah, I never set out in coaching with any particular goals. Even when the BLACKCAPS coach role came along and Canterbury before that, there's never any guarantees of A, getting the role, and B, being successful at it as well. And I think, I have some, once you get roles, I think is then when you more work with the organisation around what success looks like and how you can help, I guess, foster the environment to get the success you're looking for as well. The hard thing about coaching is most people probably always look at the win-loss record and judge your success on that or not. But as Brendon just said, and very, very rightly so, people can be coaches at all levels and can do it very, very successfully. And one of the unfortunate things in New Zealand is that not everyone can be paid a salary that affords them to coach. And for me, some of the most important areas are the ages between 15 and 18. And that's where people can really be developed and molded and shaped to make probably Brendon's and my job easier as we get older. And I think those types of things aren't always sought after because they don't necessarily pay salaries, for example, and are the higher profile, I guess, jobs. But I can assure you all the love that I have for being the BLACKCAPS coach. There are also some times where you don't want to be that person at times, and it can be difficult. And it's the scrutiny of it becomes much more difficult than what I even probably realised when I took the job on. Yeah,
and I guess that's something to go into as well. You mentioned as well, you don't know what's happening 6 months down the line. And is that a concern? Maybe not when you first go into coaching, but as you do progress through the levels, is there that concern? New Zealand is a pretty small market. There are a few jobs in that top bracket. Is there any concern around, I mean, the role you're in now, once you've been the BLACKCAPS coach, what comes after that? Or is it purely enjoy it while you can and find something later on? Or is there some concern around that small market, around the job prospects, around the potential lack of job security that goes with it as well?
It's a good question, Frankie, because there's always, I guess, there's always that stage when you get to the back end of contracts and you wonder, am I going to be re-employed again in the future? And that adds stress to you and your family around it as well. I guess my philosophy around it is there's never any guarantees, and I just hope that the role I do, whether I get re-employed or not, that you hope it, when you step out of it, that people can hand on heart say he gave everything he had to that role, and that he's left the place better than when he started it. And that's all I guess I'm trying to do, along with trying to get the very, very best out of other people. And they are the intangibles that you don't always see. Because again, if you only measure it on win and loss, and in 1 year, there's only one team that wins it, and in New Zealand cricket, there's 5 people that don't. So it's a pretty poor way to look at it. But the other success measures for me go on players developing, on lifting their status at the moment in world rankings, and the team playing well together and reaching, I guess, some of the targets and goals that we're trying to achieve in terms of the way we're playing, but also world tournaments is clearly something that when you're an international coach, that people are looking for success. I think in New Zealand, we can be pretty harsh critics of time, remembering we're a pretty small cricketing country when you look at the resources we have, the number of people we have, compared to some of our competitors. I think cricket in New Zealand on the whole is in pretty good shape when you consider the success that both, I think, the White Ferns and BLACKCAPS have had. And ultimately, they are the key markers of success for, I guess, New Zealand as a whole.
And what about, since it is that small market, what about the mentoring side? Brendon, did you have any mentors when you first, I guess, started out as a coach, or even now? Do you have people that you lean on, that you look to maybe for advice, or when things probably aren't going as well as they could do?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, as you said in your intro, I was really fortunate to, I suppose, go through perhaps more of a traditional pathway to coaching, through the community game, through underage cricket, and then with the Magicians in the performance environment, and then into a professional environment with Canterbury. So, I mean, I lean on Steady all the time for advice, but yeah, I have trusted people who I contact, and they're not so much trusted people who will pat me on the back and say, oh, you know, things will be okay and things like that. They're the trusted people who will say, well, things aren't good enough, and you've got to, let's talk about how we can make them better. And that's what I respect out of those people, because, you know, just like the players, I want to be a better coach. And so I need people around me who are going to give me a kick up the backside if I need one.
And you talked about your progression being a reasonably typical one, kind of through the stages. Is there a right progression? If you had your chance to start over again at the start of your coaching career, would you follow the same path, or are there maybe a couple of different ways you could go about it?
Look, I don't think for me I don't think so. I think for every individual, their path is going to be different, you know, and that depends. Everyone's shaped differently because of the experiences that they've had, and you know, I suppose the opportunities that come their way. So for me, it was never about, well, I'm not going to take this because I don't know what's next. I think Steady alluded to that beforehand. It's not something that I really set a lot of goals for. But once I got into coaching on a semi-professional sort of basis, and then to a professional environment, it just all seemed relatively natural. But at the time, even when I was with the Magicians, Frankie, it was something at the time I never thought about being the assistant coach of the men's team. So, you know, you commit to something and you want to see it through, and then, you know, when opportunities present themselves. So.
Excellent. And Steady, are there challenges moving straight from playing into coaching? Is that a difficult thing to do?
Yeah, I think the roles as a senior player and a coach there's some similarities, but there's also some major differences. And the key one, I think, being when you're a senior player, you're often mates with people in the team and that as well. It's fine to go up and have a yarn, have a beer with them or whatever, and tell them what you think. But at the end of the day, you're not the person that's hiring and firing them. And as a coach, ultimately, that's what you do. Every time you select a team, you have 11 people that are generally like you, and they think, oh yeah, the coach isn't so bad, he's given me the opportunity. And you probably have 4 or 5 others in your squad that probably want you out, and you get rid of them because he's not picking me and I'm not getting the opportunities that I want. But I guess all you can do in that situation is be as honest and as clear with those people as you want. And sometimes what players are looking for in that time is, what do I have to do to make the team? And it's not always as easy as that. And they're very tough conversations to have at times. But I guess as long as you can be open, as honest, and not, I guess, throw things out there flippantly, because the players just need that straight up, this is where we think you're at. And sometimes you can't actually do anything else. We just think this person is better than you in this situation. And that's often, I think, hard to take. Being that I've been a player myself, I understand, because I had those messages given to me, and they're very hard to take. So I guess if you can have empathy there, then I think that can help you with your relationships as well. But yeah, I think any players, I guess, have a foot in the door because they've been there, they understand the environments. But as soon as you start opening your mouth, as soon as you start, I guess, doing your actions, there's a very quick, I guess, rapport you either get or you don't with the team. And that's ultimately what you're measured on as a coach. I mean, you read out the players, the stats and that before. I was going to say, frankly, they actually have no bearing on me as a coach now. So I think in many ways they're irrelevant, and I'm pleased that people don't know what I was really like as a player, because the game has definitely moved on from then.
Is there maybe some merit to doing something else after your cricketing career? So finishing up as a player, having the time to perhaps work a different job. Maybe that is where the women's side of the game comes in as well, the ability to go and work with a different group of people before possibly coming back into that same environment that you were in as a player? Yeah,
well, for me it was, whilst I was a player, I was a domestic player. It was a summer contract. In the winter, I did 3 or 4 or 5 different jobs, and it was to keep me stimulated and me going as well. I was lucky at the back end of my career to pick up a role with New Zealand Cricket actually around coach education. And for me, that was a real point of difference from what I've been doing, and gave me a different insight into coaching. And it's probably where I would say that the 3 or 4 years I was involved there, I probably learnt the most when I was actually out talking with other coaches and what they were doing, why they were doing it, how they set up their visions for the teams and things like that. So I definitely think having other outside things, and even when you're in coaching, like now, having the opportunity to still get some time away or study yourself a little bit or look at other opportunities is still a really healthy thing to do. So you have balance, just like we ask the players to have that. The trouble with coaching at times is it's all encompassing, and you don't see the stuff that goes in behind the scenes. And for me, I often think that when the game's on is actually my downtime. So when the game's on, I can't actually influence too much what's happened. Everything I do comes before that, or you can influence a little bit, but not a lot once the game started. So I try and use that as my time to relax, to enjoy what's going on, and try not be overly emotional with what's actually happening out there, but try and enjoy the fruits of labour, I guess, of what you know has gone in before then.
And if we're talking a coaching philosophy, Brendon, do you have an overarching philosophy? Do you have a style that would encompass you? And has that changed as your career has progressed as well?
Yeah, it has. I think you go through phases as a coach, as you go through the levels around potentially around what you want success to look like from from you as an individual, as a coach. I mean, my philosophy is really simple. My philosophy is about the player, the person, and developing the whole person, and particularly I suppose at the men's level, it's been about those interpersonal relationships and making sure that the guys are well outside of cricket as what they are inside of cricket. And my philosophy is also strongly about values and having a values-based culture, because I'm a firm believer that that's what gets the best out of players, and players' performances improve when they know that they've got a culture that's based on strong values and work ethic.
And what about yourself, Steady? What's your style? A couple of words to sum it up, or even perhaps how would you hope that players would describe you as a coach?
Oh, geez, that's hard, because I think I'm a very, very different coach now to when I was 10 years ago and 10 years before that. And I think, as Brendon said, you're ever evolving. Look, I hope at the end of the day that the players would just say that I had their best interests at heart, because ultimately I think my role was to try and make those better. And as Brendon said, that's not always got just to do with being on the park. That's around their balance in life, their attention to detail, and their preparation as well. And that has flow-on effects. We in the BLACKCAPS now, we would have close to half of our players, I imagine, as fathers as well. And at the end of the day, being a father is much more important than, I think, when you've got children than being a cricketer. So there's all those other things that come into, I guess, just being good people, and cricket is hopefully the way that we play the game, the way that we coach the game, is almost a byproduct of what we are as people in real life as well.
Nice. Now, you've both worked in women's cricket, so I'm going to try and pick your brains around that a little bit now as well. What are the biggest differences between coaching the two genders, working with them? Brendon, I'll get you to go first. Are there some things that really jump out as being really different, or is it just purely cricket's cricket?
No, yeah, there are changes. There are differences. The men certainly hit the ball a lot harder than what girls do. But in terms of the women's game, from my perspective, I found it hugely beneficial in terms of my understanding of the girls are incredibly professional. Although they may not be professional athletes, they are incredibly professional, and your time management needs to be on point, or else you'll know about it. You'll get told about it. So, yeah, there are some things from a skill perspective that are different to the men's, but yeah, I think that from when I was coaching women's cricket, the game has evolved just unbelievably in the last 5 to 8 years. It's incredible, the difference. So, yeah, big changes.
I mean, the 142 is a little bit easier to throw as well. That's but Steady, any differences you can pick out, or perhaps maybe any misconceptions that coaches have about women's cricket, that once maybe you get into that environment, you realise it's a little bit different than what you thought?
Yeah, like Brendon, I really enjoyed the time that I worked with the woman, and I think for me, coming out of, I guess, being a player in the first class circuit for about 12 years or so, you can get very, I guess, ingrained in what that culture's like, and I think coaching the woman probably softened me slightly and rubbed off a few of the tougher edges. But other than the obvious, the pace of the game, of the men's game, is obviously a lot faster, and that's just because of the physical strength and attributes that males have. I tried to, I guess, treat women very much the same in terms of my job is to try and make them better. There's no doubt, I think, that the girls can be a little bit more emotional than the guys at times, and certainly there were more tears in that, and that was only from me, Frankie. But also guys, I think, can be harder to break down at times. Their egos are probably more on show, and I think the higher you go, the more you deal with that as well. And it's not saying girls don't have egos at times, because some do, but I think girls, as Brendon said, very much from what I've seen, has never been about a handout attitude or anything. It's always been hand up and help each other, and it's something I've always admired about the women's game, and the closeness that I saw in teams that I was involved with as well. So, yeah, I mean, nothing more to add really around that. It's very rewarding and very challenging, because you do see gains, I think, perhaps at a quicker rate than what you do with guys at times, and that can be really rewarding as a coach.
And that's largely, well, in my opinion, that's largely because some of the girls who are starting out in cricket at a domestic level haven't had the volume, or haven't had the experiences that guys will generally have when they come into that environment. So they are wanting to learn. They are wanting to take on board information. They ask a lot more questions, and I suppose there is an element of being able to be a little bit more innovative with the girls, because they're not so worried about what the outcome's going to be.
Like that. How about the fact that we don't see a whole lot of female coaches in the women's game or in the men's game? Is it purely a physical thing that women struggle to perhaps have the same physicality in a men's role to be able to fill a coaching role in a men's side, or is there something else that we can be doing to encourage women to get into that coaching space?
Well, I guess from my perspective there, I don't think there's any difference at all. I think women can ask questions the same way guys do. They can cut someone from a contract list the same way guys do as well. So there's absolutely no reason why they can't. But I think generally in New Zealand, we aren't always great at, and haven't always been great at supporting women into roles like that as well. But I mean, I think in my time, I've watched some women coaches and stuff as well, and I can learn a lot from them as well, and really admire the way that they go about things. So yeah, I don't know really what else to say around that, other than there's no reason, in my opinion, why they can't, I guess, go all the way and coach White Ferns, and maybe even one day they coach BLACKCAPS. Who knows?
Yeah, I completely agree. There is no reason why females can't find that pathway to domestic or international cricket teams. No reason whatsoever. They need the opportunities just like men do.
And if you were going to give, if we've got people who are sitting here listening to this who think, yeah, I want to get into women's cricket, that's where I see myself coaching, that's the sphere I want to be in, what would be that one piece of advice, Gary, that you would give to them if they're considering that as a career move?
Yeah, don't coach Frankie Mackay.
That's rough. Not unless you've got to have a good shoulder to do it. You've got to have a good shoulder.
Look, no different to coaching anyone else, I think. If you want to get into women's cricket and you see a pathway there, well, it's very rewarding, and perhaps in many ways it's maybe somewhere that you could progress faster than the men's game, because there are the same number of opportunities with perhaps less women playing in that as well. So if you do get, I guess, fast-tracked or go through systems there, then that's good. But I'll reiterate something that I said right from the very start. It's often that people want to look upwards and keep aspiring upwards, but some people do unbelievably fantastic jobs at areas that perhaps aren't always given the salary reward or the remuneration around it. And I absolutely tip my hat to those people that do those roles, and are so important in grounding people and giving them the basics. And I know with my children and that, and go back and help coach, that I'm not sure I've got the patience to necessarily coach at that level all the time. And for those people that do those roles, if you are very good at it and you're seeing success, please just understand the importance that you have in doing that, as opposed to always having to move through grades all the time.
And how about women's cricket? One of my passions, obviously. But Brendon, indoor cricket's been a big passion of yours as well. What are, I guess, I think at times that they probably cop a little bit of flack from outdoor cricketers. What are some of the pros and cons of the game, and I guess the differences in coaching in that area as well?
Look, I'm an advocate for indoor cricket. I haven't actually coached a lot in indoor, but look, there are some great skill sets that you can get from playing, I suppose, all year round, particularly at a younger age when you're still developing your game. And the speed of the game, the skill sets, the constant repetition for what you do fielding wise is great, and I think it's something that should be endorsed at a younger age if kids are keen on their cricket, and particularly in the women's game as well. I mean, there have been some highly successful outdoor cricketers that have played indoor cricket for long periods of time, and it's just another way of honing their skills. Perhaps as you start to go up the levels, there's potentially some argument to say that indoor cricket's not always great for your game, but again, it provides that piece around adaptability and the need to adjust and different surfaces, and so it's certainly worthwhile.
And how about in terms of the future of coaching? Are we possibly heading now towards more of a football style manager who's the head coach and then got some more hands-on people underneath them? Or do you think that head coaching role will always have that hands-on side to it?
Frankie, I think in New Zealand, the head coach will always have a hands-on side to it. And I think that's simply because of resources here. Even in the I guess current BLACKCAPS team that I'm involved with, we're extremely well resourced when you compare it to MA sides or club sides and things like that. But when you look internationally, we in many cases have half as many support staff as what some others do, and so I think there's always that element of being less well resourced than your Indias, your Englands, your Australias in particular. So I think there will always be that hands-on element. And I also think when you come through the systems, you're extremely hands-on. And one of the things I actually found hard at times was I felt like a bit of a fraud at times when I started the BLACKCAPS role, is that I had all these other people around to help me. And one of the first things I needed to learn to do was to delegate better and actually step back and see the bigger picture. And so I think everywhere you coach and every level you coach, you have different sets of skills that are required at each of those levels to get the best out of yourself and the people you're working with. And it's just being able to adapt to those situations. But I think there'll always be a hands-on role in New Zealand.
And those big support staffs, I can picture in my mind England Ashes sides that have come over to play Australia, and there's almost as many support staff as there are players. Is there a point that instead of helping that can almost become a hindrance as well, or is it simply more is better?
Well, in my opinion, I think it helps being not too big in New Zealand. We come from that, I guess, mentality of the number 8 wire type mentality of chipping in, helping each other. And I think in my experiences with the BLACKCAPS, one of the things that's great is all the support staff have learned how to chip in and to help each other out. And I think that's part of the culture and I guess the legacy that we want to leave with the team, that we're about helping each other, I guess, first and foremost, as opposed to just helping yourself.
And Brendon, you mentioned a little bit earlier around vision and trying to get the best out of players and being values-based. How do you actually go about that? You've got a group of players, you come in possibly as a new coach. How do you try and get them all on board with what you're trying to achieve?
Look, it's something that I still haven't. You're never going to nail it because it's always going to be different with the group of players. And first and foremost, you need to understand what you value. You need to have that down pat, because if you don't know, then whatever you try and impart on the players or the team is going to be muddled. So you've got to be really clear in yourself. But it's a collaboration, Frankie. You've got to be really clear on what you stand for. And there's a great saying: it's if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything. So you got to be clear on that, and then you've got to collaborate with the players and get buy-in from them. And if that's around your values, if that's around adopting a theme, the behaviours, the actions that you expect in your environment, well then those conversations need to be had, because you need to have everyone on the same page.
And do you ever look to, I know you've both been involved in multiple coaching courses, coaching groups, do you ever look to use other sports, other successful sporting sides?
Yeah, not necessarily to watch or take ideas, because I think cricket can be pretty unique in terms of the way we go about our sport compared to others. But you, for example, look at baseball and softball with throwing techniques but for me, not so much technique stuff. I will find out and seek out opportunities to talk to other coaches at times around things such as culture and putting teams together. And I mean, it's strange that the more I've probably coached and the more I've got into it, the more you realise sort of less and less. So there's so many other ideas and that going on out there. And when I was young, I was definitely a lot more sure of myself. I think as a coach that I thought I knew my way and that's how I was going to do it. But as I said, in that time, things have changed a lot in the way I've coached, and I think much more for the better as well.
And I guess changing over time as well, technology possibly plays more of a part. There's plenty of stories of you dragging around your giant video camera at the start of your coaching career, Gary. But has the increased technology, has that made it easier for coaches now? Yeah,
I think it has. I mean, I think that story has been embellished a little bit over time as well. But look, I mean, every game or every ball that's bowled in an international game, we have people coding it that we can, I guess, look at the footage, the analysis that come from it, and try and formulate plans that then when we coach our players, but then when we play against opposition teams, we can have very, very clear plans in place that we can then debrief against and evaluate against as well. And I think the scouting, the analytical side of it that's come into cricket is much more thorough, certainly than when I was a player. But you also don't want to take away from the naturalness and the attributes that players have themselves. So there's a fine line, I think, in working between the two. But in my role, we're extremely fortunate that everything you basically see on the TV with the beehives and all those wagon wheels and everything, that's all done ball by ball for us. And if you see on TV me sitting in front of a screen, it's probably looking at some of that analysis.
And what about, Brendon, the big differences between coaching school cricket, moving into club cricket, that kind of area? What's the biggest difference between that amateur side of coaching and then when you make the move into the professional game?
Well, what's most noticeable is that the very good players stand out. The very good players have time, and they've got something repeatable about whatever they do that allows them to have success, and that's their time is a massive factor of that. So what I did, I suppose, as an assistant coach working in that second 11 for a few years, was that we still don't know a lot about those players and how they may transition into being a professional cricketer. So it's about providing them with as many opportunities as we can, not only from a training perspective, but also experiences, playing on different surfaces, perhaps being slightly more innovative with how we train, or perhaps shifting mindsets around how we train from a club player to a right, well, this is what we need to see from you if you're going to be a successful first-class cricketer. And we need to, I suppose we need to stress test players to see what they can and can't do. So, yeah, so to answer your question, the very good players stand out, and they've got time, or they've got the ability to cope with all kinds of different pressures and different external factors.
And I guess the further up the line you get as well as a coach, the more time you're actually spending at cricket. How do you keep a work-life balance, I guess, between the two, Brendon?
It's very poorly, as my wife keeps pointing out. But no, it's something that certainly something that I've struggled with a little bit, being in the role of head coach for the last 2 years. Steady mentioned it before, it's all encompassing. And when you're not coaching, you're either in front of a laptop looking at footage, pulling apart perhaps technique, or finding trends in games and having a look through stats. So there's a lot to it. I've got 2 young boys who keep me fit and keep me on my toes. So, but again, when I get home, the throwdowns are never finished.
Excellent. And Steady, I guess you touched on it earlier. You're currently BLACKCAPS coach. There comes a lot of, I guess, pressures as well, and the media get involved. Probably bring up when you had a time off, time to go back to the family, and everyone in the media jumped on that. Jeremy Coney, I think, told you that you should be off working in a hardware store if you wanted time off to spend with the family. So how do you deal with that stuff? All the external pressures, the media, the fact that everyone wants a piece of you.
Quite honestly, it's not that easy all the time, because it's hard to ignore that stuff. But at the end of the day, you do just have to ignore it, because it has no bearing on me being a better coach or not, other than at times takes up a wee bit of your time that you should be devoting to the team when people want to talk more about it. The reality of that situation was it was planned 6 to 8 months in advance. It had happened years before that, but it goes back to exactly what I was saying before. Everyone's worried about winning and losing. And if we hadn't have lost that series 5-0 when there were, I think, 2 super overs and 4 games that we actually could have won, then probably no one would have said anything about it. So at the end of the day, I viewed that as annoying, frustrating, but actually not that important to me as a coach. So you just have to let some of the stuff that's said slide. And as I was in another Zoom meeting today, and another coach actually said very, very eloquently, it's very easy to just push the mute button. And at times it's what you have to do.
Absolutely. And just last couple of questions. Over your coaching careers, what are the biggest things that you've learned, either about the game, about yourself? Maybe they've come from mistakes that you've made along the way, and actually, if you had a chance to do it again, you'd love to try and do it a different way. Are there 1 or 2 things that really stick out to either of you?
For me, it would really, coaching to me all just comes back to the relationship piece and the developing of relationships. And again, the more I've coached, I guess at a higher level, the more I've understood how important they are, because if you can't develop trust with people, it's very, very hard to then challenge them and ask them to consider change to their game of a way that you think might be better. And again, it might sound a bit, I guess, touchy-feely and that around it, but those ideas around trust and empathy, I think are critical to becoming a good coach in the long run. And I've certainly made a number of mistakes, too many probably to talk about or even pick any out. And you look back and you reflect all the time on the way you've done it, and you always try and find ways of getting better. And as Brendon said earlier, that's no different to being a player either. Players want to get better. I guess the difference with coaching is it's not always about yourself. It's often you're the last person you think about. It's about everyone else. And it was a great question you asked Brendon just before around what he does to keep that balance, because it's very, very difficult. But I think it's a really, I guess, prevalent point that the coach should be treated the same as any other player in terms of looking after themselves as well. Otherwise, the burnout will happen much, much quicker than what players do, because you're thinking about 20 other people, whereas players offering just thinking about themselves.
Yeah, look, I completely agree with Steady. I think the communication piece, the relationship piece is absolutely critical. And I think for me, from an out and out coaching perspective, and I suppose someone who's still growing in the coaching space, is that the best players want to be coached, and that's something that perhaps early on in my coaching career I perhaps didn't pay as much attention to as what I should have, but those players want to be coached just as much as the young person that's coming into your team. So that for me has been a big learning over the years.
And you both have mentioned that you're not perfect, have made mistakes along the way, but there's got to be some good moments that stick out as well. Have you got a proudest moment in your coaching career so far?
Results wise, I mean, for me, going to World Cups and seeing teams achieve that is enormously gratifying. And it's just the icing on the cake, though. In terms of proudness and that, I see there's so many moments that you can think of, but I love just seeing when you see people succeed from things that they've been working on and trying. And that gives me as much satisfaction out of anything, that in training 2 days ago that someone was working on something, or they were having some trouble, that you've had some conversations around it, you've perhaps connected them with someone else, maybe you've done some work on it yourself as a coach as well, and then you see them go and see reward from it. And that to me is what coaching's about. The satisfaction comes from seeing those small gains. And you see them every day. But also coaching at times is sometimes you want to make it difficult for people as well. That there's a saying, you got to comfort the uncomfortable and make it uncomfortable for those that are comfortable. And at times I think that rings really true, that you want to keep challenging and pushing people as hard as you can. And that's where you see the small successes and gains. But no doubt about it, the higher up the chain you go, the harder it is to see fast fixes, because whilst they're very, very skillful players, they're also at the very, very top of their game as well, playing the very best in the world. So the biggest gains you can see as a coach, I think, is when you start coaching and early on, and especially working with children. I think it's enormously rewarding when you see them develop the skills that they have.
Yeah, look, I haven't coached at World Cups and things like that yet, so I can't be comparable to Steady. But I think some of
Bangladesh, Brendon.
Look, I've tried to wipe Bangladesh out of my memory. Sorry, it was 3 weeks of my life I don't get back, Frankie.
I hear you.
No, it's probably the proud moments for me are often for players, the achievements that they have off the cricket field. I mean, Steady said there are instances in games where, I was bloody immensely proud of Leo Carter hitting Devi for 6 sixes in an over, and in the Super Smash last year, and what that can do for someone. But just as much as him passing university exams and things like that. And again, that comes back to the relationship pieces, that, we've got to care for the person, not always the cricketer.
I like that. That's the questions from me. You're out of the hot seat, from me at least anyway. But I will now pass over to Aaron, who has had the opportunity to collate some questions from people that have registered and people who've been watching here tonight. So Question Master Aaron, it's over to you.
Cool. Firstly, thank you to everyone that has submitted questions. We've had quite a few come through, to say the least. So unfortunately, we probably won't be able to get to all of them. Those that I won't get to, I will try to talk to Brendon and Gary tomorrow, get those answers sent out via email. So firstly, question for both of you. Who has had the most significant impact on your careers, at coaching careers, that is?
Look, Steady's, yeah, sorry, you can mute this, Steady. Steady's probably had the biggest impact on me. I mean, he was the guy that gave me, I suppose, the opportunity to coach on a full-time basis, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And some of the experiences that we had with the Canterbury team was outstanding. So, yeah, as I said before, he's a guy that I lean on quite a bit. So, yeah.
For me, probably all the people that I've been coached for in the coached by in the past have had a real impact on me. You remember the good things and the things you didn't like so much as well, but they all had an impact on me. And I think also probably my wife as well has had a really big impact recently in just giving you the support that you need, because it's tough. The scrutiny of it's really tough, but to know that you've got the support of family and stuff as well, and what you're trying to do is, I think, critical for you being able to have some longevity in the role.
Cool, thank you. What has been your biggest challenge moving from an amateur to a professional environment as a coach?
Probably the hours that you have to put in. When you become a professional coach, it's like any other job, but probably more as well. And as Brendon said earlier, it's not just about coming home and you knock off at 5. You're preparing for the next day. You're watching a lot of video. You're sometimes ringing, selecting teams. There's so much more that goes into it that's behind the scenes. So it's certainly different from that sense. And I have great admiration for all amateur coaches out there that still put into the game. And I hope when I'm finished as a professional coach as well, that I'll keep giving back, and probably until the day I die with cricket as well, because I love the game so much.
And Brendon?
Yeah, I think seeing whether there's a perception out there that coaching's easy, or that it's a great lifestyle to have, it provides flexibility, but it's incredibly taxing, incredibly busy. Yep, there's some great moments, and I suppose the matches are the end result. It's what's not seen leading up to that match that perhaps people don't understand. And as Steady said, there's a lot of complex pieces to it that your job description is never what it is on paper.
Cool. How much is coaching at the highest level about player management versus actual tactical, technical work?
Good question.
9% of it is around player management. The technical side of it looks after itself, really, when you have international cricketers that have been playing at that level for a long period of time. But I think my role as a coach is to give ideas, but it's also to listen to their ideas as well. So I think it's definitely more around managing players than it is having to formulate plans. I think you facilitate and help the players work out what's the best way, but you don't have to come up with all the ideas.
Yeah. Awesome.
And it's a difficult one when often the head coach is convener of selectors and is having to make calls around who's playing and who's not, and the management of those non-selected players, and from the experiences that I've had, providing them with the opportunities to get better, or the clarity that they need to get their way back into the team, is really important. So from a man management perspective, that's absolutely crucial.
Oh, and the last question, more of an advice one. What advice would you give a young coach trying to make their way up the ladder?
My advice would be ambitious, know where you want to go, but also really understand where you're having the biggest impact, because unfortunately, there's only one BLACKCAPS role and one White Ferns role. There's only 6 MA roles, and whilst it can, as Brendon said, it can seem sort of glorified and that at times, there's also, coaching is unfortunately a cutthroat business where contracts can end, and it's certainly not as secure as other jobs. So you've got to be very, very clear that you're prepared to go down that path as well, and I guess take the good and the bad that sometimes that you can receive. But my main thing would be enjoy what you do and make sure that at the end of the day that you're very, very passionate about helping other people, because ultimately I think that's what coaching's about.
Yeah. Focus on developing the players. The result will take care of itself, and that's the best way forward.
Awesome. That all sounds good to me. And that is it. You two are off the hook now. You've answered all the questions that we've had. You've dealt with us putting you in the hot seat. So, look, a massive thank you to you both for giving up your time here tonight to have a chat to us. It's been outstanding, and just hearing about your journeys and your insights into coaching, it's been really beneficial for myself as well as all the people here listening. So a massive thanks to you both for your time tonight. And that's it. That is episode 4 done and dusted. And that means that we have come to the end of our webinar series. And I really hope that personally you've taken as much out of this as I have. It's been wonderful to have you all along on this ride as well. But the big thanks, first of all, have to go to Aaron at Canterbury Cricket for his work, setting this up and becoming the question master as well. And also, we couldn't have done it without Sefa and the assistance of Ara Institute of Canterbury. It's been really rewarding, I guess, to sit through these, and I hope that you all are feeling the same way as well. I feel like personally there's been a lot of learning that I can take out of these, and I hope that is passed on to everyone. So I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've watched all 4. If you haven't, you can catch them on Canterbury Cricket's Facebook page. They are under the video section. This one will be up within a couple of days as well, if there's some things you want to go back over and look over. But mainly, my biggest thank you is to the guests. The 2 tonight were fantastic, but that was a theme throughout the series as well. And lastly, the biggest thank you is to you, the people who have watched and listened along with us, fired in those questions as well to keep the pressure on our guests and keep them on their toes. So a big thank you from me to all of you, and I really hope that you have enjoyed Canterbury Cricket's Team Talk series.